Well, January was another great month for Carolina Hurricanes prospects right around the globe. No surprise, Chicago Wolves phenoms Bradly Nadeau and Justin Robidas are at the top of the list. They're joined this month by teammate Felix Unger Sorum, as well as collegiate Jayden Perron and returning goaltender Jakub Vondras. Joining me as always to discuss the top 5 prospects of the month and the players we should keep an eye on in the coming month. I'm delighted to welcome in from Canes Prospects, of course, Nick Bass. Hi there, Nick.
Hello.
Hey, Nick, another interesting month. In particular, of course, some of these players were just off the charts, and we'll talk about them. But interesting to see coming back at number 5 is Jakub Vondras. Now, Vondras was number 3 last month. And he's off to a pretty good start. He's playing in the Czechia 2 League with Pardubice, and of course, he's playing well. Some interesting things about Vondras. He is a bigger goaltender. We've talked about this before. He checks in at 6'4". He was a 6th rounder. Darren York said this about Vondras. I thought it was interesting. Incredibly smart goalie, lots of little shoulder checks, and being able to recognize side-to-side plays, and his athletic and the power to get across. So it's somebody we're excited to bring into our organization. We talked about this last month. Great lateral movement for Vondras. What did you see with Jakob in January?
Yeah, he's a big athletic goalie who knows what he's doing in the net, and he's just continuing a really solid run of form that he's had over the past 2 months, 3 months at this point, and putting together a really solid season over there in the Czech Republic.
Well, an interesting thing about Vondras, he played back in 23-24. He was with Sudbury in the OHL. But I wasn't aware that he also played for Team Czechia in the World Juniors.
He won bronze.
They got bronze. Yeah. So that's an interesting one. I didn't really see that until some recent analysis I was doing on Vondras, but sounds like he had a great opportunity to get some international play, which is always fantastic. So, and of course, he went back to Czechia following that season in Sudbury. So now moving on to number 4, and we've talked about him a lot, is Jayden Perron. Jayden, of course, with Michigan in the NCAA. He's off to a pretty good start this year. 28 games played, 12 goals, 16 assists, and he's playing the way that we thought he might. What have you seen with Jayden?
He's become a lot more consistent. Whenever the puck's on his stick, he's one of the more dynamic players in all of college hockey, and he's finally been consistent this year in regards to his other 2 years at North Dakota. It just seems like something didn't particularly pan out for him. So now that he's in Michigan, he's being relied on the top line. He's running a power play. He's doing it all, and he's looking a lot better this year.
It seems to be really finding his game, so that's great. 3rd rounder, we've talked about this before. He was drafted quite a bit later than a lot of folks thought he would. Even Darren York had said something about this. We really didn't expect to see him that late in the draft. So that's fantastic. And again, we're hoping that he'll continue to go. And he's one of those short kings that you often talk about too, Nick. And another one of the smaller players checking in at 5'9", about 175 pounds. So yeah, Perron doing very, very well. Next up, we start talking about some Chicago Wolves. And boy, I'll tell you, they're having a great season. And this guy is really starting to fly, and that's Felix Unger Sorum. Felix Unger Sorum, he's been hot lately. In his last 11 games, he's got 2 goals and 14 assists. So he's really starting to put it all together. And we know he's a great setup guy. And so what are we seeing from Felix Unger Sorum?
It's a good mix of things. I think one is the confidence. He's just showing he's able to do a lot more with the puck just because he knows what he's doing in his second year in North America now, and he's a lot more adapted to it. And then the other part of it is, we talked with Spiros Anastas I think 2 weeks ago at this point.
Yeah.
And his biggest thing with Felix was that he's gotten so much better at being able to handle the physicality because he's, grown a lot in the weight room and just grown a lot overall. So he's able to handle the level of physicality that the AHL offers, and that has also helped him a lot to become almost a player where he's doubled his point total from last year.
Yeah, I mean, he's off to a great start. He's got 10 goals, 29 assists in 43 games, so he's doing very, very well. Interestingly enough, McKean's, when they were talking about him at the start of the year in their season preview, said exactly the same thing. And they were talking about him needing to embrace contact, needing to play a heavier game as he kind of moves into his second season in North America. So clearly he's doing that. He's scoring some goals. He had a run earlier in the year. We talked about that a little bit, where he was scoring a lot of power play goals at one point, and that's how he kind of got up to the 10 goal mark pretty quickly. But he's just setting them up like crazy. So, and I think part of that is because of the two gentlemen we're going to talk about now, because they are definitely potting a lot of goals on the power play for the Chicago Wolves. And let's kick it off with the first one, and that would be Bradly Nadeau. We've got Bradly Nadeau, of course, known as the Show with the Chicago guys. He's doing it all this year. In his last 21 games, Bradly has 13 goals and 16 assists, so he's tearing it up. He's now 14th in the AHL in scoring. He's played just 34 games, so he's got significantly less games than the other folks. He's got 18 goals, 23 assists on the year. He's a plus 22, so he's definitely playing a solid two-way game. Quite impressive. Now, last night at the AHL All-Star competition, of course, he was able to let one of his howitzers go, and he hit 103 miles an hour, which was the best on the west side. He was only bested by Arthur Kaliev, who was 104 miles an hour for the East. So great stuff by Bradly last night in that competition. What are we seeing from him in January?
He's just become a more complete overall player. I know everybody knows the shot and everybody knows his offensive capabilities, but, for the Wolves, he's become their first unit PK guy. He's able to do a lot more things at even strength that he wasn't able to do last year, and it's just a great work of development from him and the Chicago coaching staff to get him ready to probably be an NHL player sooner rather than later.
Well, I mean, don't forget, Player of the Week. He was a Player of the Week in December, the week ending December 7, and then again in January. And more exciting, he was AHL Player of the Month in January. So, he just keeps getting it done. Outstanding season for this guy. And, it's interesting what McKean said, too. And they came back and said he's not just a shooter. He's also a strong playmaker who pre-scans for lanes and actively engages defenders to make his passes deceptive. He's getting a lot of assists as well, and that's the complete game of Bradly Nadeau. How are you feeling about him as the season goes on? What do you expect to see for this next month with Nadeau?
I think he'll just continue doing what he has been doing, which is just showing up in the big moments and leading the Wolves to hopefully a nice little playoff run here. Somebody just replied to the hardest shot thing and said that defensively he isn't ready, and I'm just going to continue to say it over the next few weeks, is that he is. He's gone from a guy who wouldn't even sniff the penalty kill to being on the first unit, and seeing his plus-minus flip, and the plus-minus, it's not a great stat to judge players on for the most part, but if you're doing it year over year and you go from minus 20 to plus 20 when you're playing on the same line with the same deployment, that means that you are doing something right. So I would say defensively he is ready. I'd say he's an NHL player right now. That comment just pissed me off, and I just wanted to.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I think a lot of folks have been asking this question for a while, and they keep saying, he's not going to be a Rod Brindamore type guy. He's one-dimensional or whatever. They talked a lot about this, and I've been saying the same thing you're saying for a long time about Bradly Nadeau. And the other thing I found with Bradly, of course, he plays a heavier game. And he seems to like to get in on the forecheck and lay the body on. Have you noticed some of that as well?
I mean, he definitely forechecks. The physicality is still trying to get to him because he's still not, gigantic. He's I think 100 he's listed 172, and I don't
Yeah.
maybe he gets to 180 by the end of the year, but even then I don't think. But like if he gets closer to 190, he's going to be a perfectly fine guy to do that. So I think the physicality is perfectly fine for now, and it can only really get better from here.
Yeah, and he's definitely trying to add that to his game for sure. So I'm with you. I feel like Bradley is filling out his game. His offensive game is incredible. So if he can shore up that defensive game as he is right now, boy, he's got a great future for sure. Now, alongside him, another one of the short kings who we talk a lot about, who's also in that 1B side, and that's Justin Robidas. Robidas to me has just been a revelation. Last year he came in, Spiros Anastas had said a little bit about this, where he came in, last year was his first real serious pro year because, of course, the year before he was in the ECHL. And so that is professional, but it's not quite the level you
Well,
want.
he got hurt halfway through the year, so that's
Okay.
why.
Okay. So he ended up there. So in he comes last year, his first full season, and he pops 20 goals. So he certainly had a great year for Chicago, and started to show a lot of the things that we saw even in his cup of coffee with the Canes. I mean, he's a buzzsaw out there. He's doing a lot of heavy work. Now he had a stretch that was really incredible, an 18 game stretch from December 5 to January 22 where he had 16 goals and 11 assists in 18 games. So he had 27 points in that 18 game stretch, including 16 goals, which is amazing. So he's a guy that to me is really putting it all together. Again, short king, 5'8", 180 pounds. A lot of folks think he's too small to play in the NHL. What are you seeing with Justin Robidas?
First up, the too small comment is, in complete honesty, just ridiculous because I don't care that he's 5'8" and 180. He's still doing everything you want from him, and he's still being physical when he needs to be physical. It for Robida, anyways, it's a mute point in my opinion. Obviously, I think if he's 5'11" at this point, he's probably played close to 50 NHL games just because of the player that he is. But, the 5'8" is going to scare people off, but it shouldn't. He's a complete player at this point. He's a first unit penalty killer. He's a first unit power play guy. He's been on the wing for the most part, but he can do faceoffs and be a center if you really need him to be. He just does everything correctly. And, Robida's going to be a good NHL player down the line. I think he won't ever be more than just a bottom six, but he's going to be a killer bottom six forward for any NHL organization or the Hurricanes down the line.
Well, the interesting things about him, he's sitting at 20 goals, 22 assists for 42 points in 40 games. That's good enough for 11th in the AHL right now. But get a load of this. He's a plus 25, which is third in the AHL. So these are great numbers. And again, that line with him and Ryan Suzuki and Nadeau has just been terrorizing the American Hockey League. Those guys have been outstanding. It's incredible. One of the things that Spiros Anastas said on a podcast recently, Sound the Siren, he was talking about just how smart and intelligent a player that Robidas is. And he said, man, he really thinks the game. He really studies it. He's, he's come back this year and he's wiser and he understands the AHL, level and play again so much better. And he's definitely learning to be a better pro and all of those things. So a great story on Robidas. And he's another guy we're going to continue to watch. And boy, as the Wolves have started to really pick up their game, of course, the two gentlemen we've just talked about, Bradly Nadeau and Justin Robidas, have been right there. And both of them all-stars. So it's great stuff and getting a little bit of recognition. So that's the top five and some outstanding players and certainly three great ones from the Wolves. And we'll expect a lot more from them as we move into the later parts of the season. Now, honorable mentions, and there's some fun ones here. You've got a couple of defensemen that you've really highlighted coming from Russia. And let's start with Timur Cole. Cole is a big defenseman. We've talked about him before. He's 6'4", he's 205. He was a sixth rounder. Man, the Canes get some of these players so much later. He's off to a great start in the MHL this year. in Russia. He's got 11 goals and 13 assists in 29 games. So he's off to a great start. What are you seeing with Timur Cole?
I mean, he's a really solid all-around defenseman at this point. It's kind of a shame that he hasn't been able to get any game time outside the MHL because I think the MHL is not beneath him, but I don't really think he's getting challenged necessarily in the MHL just because it's a junior league in all
Right.
honesty, and he's playing 25 minutes a night on average. It's a minute, almost 2 minutes more than the next closest guy, and he's almost a point per game as a defenseman. And that's just really really solid stuff. And his contract runs out at the end of the year, so I'm interested to see where that goes if anything does happen there. But yeah, Cole's just been really solid this year. I really like his offensive ability. I think his slap shot's really good. He's been able to run a power play for Dynamo Moscow as well. So very interested in the player there.
Yeah, and again, he's a guy that he plays a great game. He can skate. He does it all. He's a big player, and a later round draft pick by the Canes. So they're continuing to find some super players. Now the other Russian defenseman that you were highlighting was Kurban Limatov. Also playing with the same team in the MHL, which is interesting. Now, Limatov is 19 in March, so he's still 18 years old. Timur Cole is already 19. So these are still young teams. They're playing away and doing some great work. In 36 games this season so far for Limatov, he's got 8 goals, 15 assists. He's a plus 17. He's, again, another big player at 6'3", almost 200 pounds. Now, here's an interesting thing from McKean's. I don't know if you saw this, Nick, but McKean said, look, Kurban Limatov was our highest ranked Russian player from last season and was snatched up by Carolina in the third round. So they really loved Limatov. They thought he was really going to be something special. What are you seeing with Kurban?
He's one of the most fun players I get to watch. He's an elite skater. He's pretty solid physically as well, and I love his work in transition. I haven't updated from the Dynamo Moscow game today because it just got over, and I haven't really done a ton with it. But he got another goal and another assist today, so he's already passed his MHL goal point total new career high as a 18-year-old, and he's just extremely fun. I want to just keep seeing him round out his game, but I mean the base that he already has with his skating and his size is just really really intriguing. So I'm interested to see what happens with his development over the next few years.
Well, he's definitely a player that the Canes were excited about. As I mentioned, McKean's very excited about Limatov. And he's another one of these big defensemen that, boy, that they can skate. They can really move the puck. Really impressive players. So I'm really excited to see how that's going to fare as well. Now, moving on to a smaller player, 5'11", 175 kind of range for Oskar Vuollet. Now, Vuollet, we had talked about in the draft this year. He was drafted in the fifth round, 133. Darren York said he's an incredibly smart player. He's been able to play fast offensively, whether it's been skating with the puck, one-on-one skills, moving the puck, being able to move with the puck, playing a give-and-go game. So he's a guy that very smart with the puck. He's playing in the SHL this year. He's a 20-year-old, so he's playing with men, which is great. What are we seeing with Oskar Vuollet?
He's just turned his whole season around. He was off to to be frank, a god awful start. And over the past month, he's really turned his game around. He's getting a lot more active, both offensively and defensively, getting a little bit more ice time as well because of what he's been able to do. And he's finally getting rewarded with pucks going in the net and some of his teammates scoring as well. So happy to see him finally get on the score sheet a little bit more.
Well, again, another player the Canes were able to pick up late in the draft, and we'll see how things kind of fare with Oskar as he continues his work in the SHL. Now, the final honorable mention is an interesting one. You've talked about him a number of times. In fact, I think I recall you said you thought he might come over to North America this year. I know he has a great interest in that Stanislav Yarovoy playing in the VHL, which is like the AHL here in North America. He's off to a pretty good start, 33 games. He's got 7 goals and 9 assists. Here's some interesting words from Darren York at the draft. He said Yarovoy went through the draft a couple of times and worked his way up this year, playing regular shifts in the KHL. So this is a couple of years ago. High end skill, high end compete, high end motor. Really, sort of that Carolina Hurricanes prototypical forward. What are we seeing with Stanislav Yarovoy?
So, first up, I personally, all I had was the report from Russia that said he was going to sign his ELC. Obviously, it
Yeah.
didn't happen, and we talked to him. Myself and Matt talked with him at development camp, and he also was trying to stay in North America, but it just didn't happen. So that was just an unfortunate thing. But I mean, yeah, he also had another kind of weird start to the season where he was bouncing between the KHL and the VHL, but he's finally kind of found his groove in the VHL, and he's looking a lot better now that he's getting consistent game time and he's getting power play time. He's looked a million times better, and he's showing off some of the creativity that makes him such a little interesting prospect down the line. So I'm happy to see him finally start performing a little bit better.
Well, he's 22 years old now. He's a little older to come over to North America. Now, one of the things the Canes have been doing, of course, has been developing some of these players in Europe before they bring them over. And we saw that, of course, it was the case with Alexander Nikishin and also Yoel Nystrom. So, with some of these guys, it takes a year or two for them to get their sea legs. The other thing, as we've discussed many times, Nick, they have a situation where these teams have, basically teams in all three leagues, being the MHL, BHL, and KHL. So sometimes you don't get as much play at the KHL level. And we see this with a lot of these players where, they'll move them up and down. Gosh, they'll put them in any of the leagues and in a season, and you could see them in all three. So it's kind of crazy. But he's in what would be the American Hockey League level, and hopefully that's going to help him. Do you think he has potential to come over at some point?
I think maybe kind of just depends how a lot of things shake out, but I really liked his development this year, and if he continues to put it all together, I mean I wouldn't hate it, but I don't really have a crystal ball for that right now.
Well, for sure. And, there's the situation with the Russians is an interesting one. I mean, I think a lot about Gleb Trikozov, currently playing in Chicago. He's a guy that, again, was highly rated coming over, came over as a youngster, and just has not been able to put it together. Any thoughts on Gleb?
I mean, we got a really good answer from Spiros a few weeks ago, where it was just he's young, he's still
Yeah.
trying to get adapted, and last year was a very rough year for him just because he went through two pretty awful leg injuries. So now it's like his first full year in North America, and he's trying to put it all together. And it's tougher for a young guy, and he's about to become a dad in a few weeks, which is dear
Wow.
God, he's 20
Okay.
years old and he's about to have a
Yeah.
child. So yeah, he's going through a whole lot of things right now, and I'm still rooting out for him because he's still very young. But
Yes.
it is a transitional period.
Well, and at different points, we've seen him really show, some very exciting talent. I mean, I think in the prospect showcase last year, he played very, very well. Had a hat trick in one of the games and so on. So he's a guy that, again, great offensive talent, but he's got to put it all together. And speaking of that, and I thought I'd just bring this up for an interesting discussion, is what are you feeling about Alexander Nikishin these days?
Uh, he's good. Uh, you know, Deployment. I've kind of stopped trying to have the argument because it is dumb. At the end of the day, I'm not an NHL head coach, so it's not my thing. But I'm liking that they're finally giving him power play time because I feel as if that's something that he can greatly use to
Yeah.
his advantage. And I thought he's been pretty good. Obviously, the defensive side's still slowly coming together, but I still think he's looked pretty good overall.
Yeah, we talked about him a little bit this week on our podcast, looking at some of the Carolina Hurricanes situations. And one of the things that I had mentioned, and I wondered if you had noticed this too, of course, Nick, is he did have some reduced playing time for a while. He was under 14 minutes, two games in a row, which to me is a little bit of a contradiction to where he should be. I mean, we recall he played 20 plus, probably 24, 25 minutes a game in Russia. In fact, I had talked about a game last year in the playoffs where he was over 35 minutes in a playoff game. It was many, into overtime and so on. But he's a guy that really thrives on play, and I was kind of disappointed because he was, his play was being reduced in that regard. Did you notice that as well?
Not really, no, because the as much as we want to think the transition from a different league to the NHL is going to be somewhat seamless, it's not.
Yeah.
The NHL is at such a different pace than everybody else that you have to learn. So I'm not really worried about it, in complete honesty. Maybe I was at the start of the year, but now it's kind of just like it'll happen.
Well, we talked an awful lot about Alex before he came over, so I always like to get your feedback when we talk about Nikishin. Looking at this past month, any other players that kind of jumped out at you that we didn't mention in the top five or the honorable mentions?
I think people were thinking about Ivan Ryabkin just because of the start he had in the
Ah,
queue, but yeah, minor injury and a lot of funny suspension stuff. Not suspension, but like just penalty stuff is just slowly, not hampering him, but he's still trying to figure out the discipline aspect of hockey, and it'll get there eventually. But I'm glad to see that the points are really not going to be a struggle for him.
well, we've talked a lot about this where, his play in Chicago, and I don't know if you talked to Spiros Anastas about this, Nick, but his play in Chicago really was a great opportunity for him to kind of learn what it's going to be a pro, and to kind of move his game to the next level. He's still very young, of course. So, it's an opportunity for him to kind of get a chance to see what it's like and some of the rigors of pro hockey and the speed and so on and so forth, and obviously the strength of the players. So I think that was a good opportunity for him, and yeah, he should tear up the queue for sure. So yeah. Now, as we look to the next month, February, what are we thinking this month in terms of potential players to keep an eye on?
I think Kurban and Cole are they're already putting up pretty decent starts to their month. Kurban Limatov is just awesome. In complete honesty, I will continue saying it. He's probably the most fun player I've gotten to watch over the past year or so. He's just electric. I couldn't tell you. And then I still think a lot of the Wolves guys, but obviously, we're less than a month away from the deadline, so it's going to be an interesting time to see what it looks like come March, whenever it is.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you that question as well, Nick, in terms of, we look at some of these prospects the Canes have, and they are very rich in terms of a prospect base. Do we think that these prospects might be parts of deals for the Hurricanes as they go towards the trade deadline on March 6th?
I've always just hated talking about the deadline ever since I started getting into prospects because like it's my job to just get these guys' names out there and get eyes on them and get people ready for the next generation. And then sometimes these guys gets moved, and it's like, well, that sucks. And especially that I guess this most recent crop of them. So guys like Nadeau, Robida,
Yes.
Legault, these are guys, and Felix. Like these are guys that I've like interviewed and talked to before, and it is just kind of weird. But if you're looking at it straight from a trade deadline perspective, I mean, I don't think you're going to find a lot of other prospects that have the value that Nadeau has, just because he's unbelievably good playing in a pro league. And then Justin Robida and Felix, they're also probably going to have some decent value. I think Felix really helped himself out this year. So yeah, I mean, they could. I'd prefer not, but I mean, they definitely could.
One last question as we wrap up. You look at the defense, you talked a lot about Timur Cole and Kurban Limatov. Who do you see as the kind of top prospect defenseman in the next wave for the Hurricanes? I mean, we've got Charles Alexis Lagos here, of course, and Yoel Nystrom. Who do you see in the next wave?
If we're not talking about Legault as part of the next wave because he's Matt and I did rankings and he was both our second ranked prospect
Yeah.
or the top defenseman. So if we're not going to count Legault, I think I had Alexander Suryatsky second highest.
Ah.
So I guess it would be him because he was a 18, 19-year-old getting regular KHL game time, being used in situations where you don't expect them to be used, penalty kill sometimes, but mainly quarterbacking power plays, and being used in overtime is rare for a younger KHL guy, and he's already earned that trust. And an injury took him out, so a lot of people just kind of forgot about him from the start of the year, but I would definitely say he's probably him or Limatov at this point are probably the next two that I'm really looking at.
Where's Noel Franzen in the scheme of things?
I think I had him fourth or fifth highest
Okay.
defenseman, somewhere
Okay.
around there, and I think playing the getting those games with Cam Abbott's Fargestad was certainly something, and glad he's back to getting good game time in the Hockey Allsvenskan again. So
Well, he's something. He's a player we've kept an eye on as well. But boy, when you look at the Canes' decor potential for the future, it's really impressive. And as you mentioned, Charles Alexis Legault, of course, he's back and should be with Chicago shortly. And he's a guy that we know he can play in the NHL. He's proven that. And as well, Yoel Nystrom, I thought, accorded himself extremely well. So the Canes have got some great young players coming. And what about Dominic Badinka?
he's been good. It's just his game is a lot quieter than a lot of other guys, so he's just learning the ropes in his first full pro year. But he's been really solid. Learning how to handle physicality as well is a big thing. So good with it.
Yeah, and I think Spiros Anastas was also commenting on Badinka recently and said, here's a guy they did not expect to see him play as much as he's played. And his situation kind of mirrors Alexander Nikishin's in some ways because they thought, okay, we'll bring him along, younger guy. We'll bring him along rather easily and slowly in Chicago. And of course, they had all the changes and injuries and call ups that they had to deal with. So Badeka ended up getting some significant playing time. And I've noticed something interesting lately. He's been teaming up with Dominic Fensori, which is kind of interesting. So clearly they've got a lot of confidence in Badeka because those guys play big minutes for Chicago. So another guy that we got to have on the radar as we look at some of these defensemen that are certainly, looking very impressive for the Canes prospect side these days. In any case, Nick, as always, great to get an update on these prospects. Always want to talk prospects with you because there's so many good ones in the Canes system these days. So we'll look forward to doing this again for February as we take a look at some of these young players that are just really starting to shine right around the globe. For those of you who've been watching or listening, of course, Nick and I are delighted you spent time with us. If you like this episode, please press the like button. If you have any comments or questions, please leave those in the comment section. And of course, if you'd like to be alerted of future episodes of Storm Tracker, please press the subscribe and the bell buttons, and you'll be made aware just as soon as they're available. As always, Nick and I are delighted you spent time with us and look forward to getting together with you real soon, right here on Storm Tracker.